Before we get going with our podcast, we'd like to take this opportunity to give Bingetown TV's first sponsor, Riverside, another huge shout out. We've been doing this podcast for the last 4 years, and we could never seem to find the perfect recording and editing software that fit all of our content creation needs. That all ended after we discovered Riverside.fm, the best software we found for podcast recording. Riverside is an all-inclusive, one-stop shop that allows for professional-level content creation through top-of-the-class features such as video marketing, easy-to-create social media clips, webinars, and automatic transcriptions of the recordings. Another incredible feature of Riverside is local recording, which bypasses poor internet connection to create studio-quality audio and video. Riverside even has an entire library of tutorials called Riverside University to assist in any way possible. If you're in the content creation business or even looking to upgrade your audio-video software for more casual chats with your friends and family, Riverside is a must-have. You can try Riverside for free at riverside.fm, and you can use the promo code BingetownTV, one word, BINGETOWN TV for 15% off. We will leave the link in the promo code in the show notes. Once again, that is riverside.fm and promo code Bingetown TV for a discount. Thanks again to Riverside for being an amazing service for our podcast and for sponsoring this episode. All right, guys. Luke, Paul, we're here. Shogun, episode 1 and 2. We have been dying for this. We've been waiting for it. Give me your thoughts. What do you guys think?
So let me give some high-level thoughts here, and then we can start going the round table before we jump into the deep dive of the actual episodes. So if you're listening to this for the first time and you didn't know, Shogun just dropped this week, and it actually came out with the 2 episodes at the same time. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer podcast. I'm sure we're going to be flying through some of the plot points that get resolved in episode 2 a little bit quicker, because this is going to be looked at as if you've seen both episodes. So please don't listen until you've watched both of them, because there's going to be a little bit of spoilers here and there. But some things I want to cover and just make sure that the audience is aware of about this show. This is a story that's based on a book, so it's an adaptation of a best-selling book by James Clavell. And I want to point this out because I read something recently, and it really caught my attention that an editor of this book was saying that this book was so popular when it came out. I'm going to read this direct quote. It's going to make sense here. What he ended up saying was, Shogun has probably conveyed more information about Japan to more people than all of the combined writings of scholars, journalists, and novelists since the Pacific War, which is just mind-blowing to think about. That something that's a historical drama, I'm sure things are exaggerated, I'm sure there's some truth to it, there is one of the most common stories around this time period. And just speaking for myself here, I have some level of awareness of the Japanese culture in modern day, and it's mostly based in my understanding and just being ingrained in the anime community. And the anime community, I'm sure it's the culture and the honorifics, all that. That's pretty much as far as my knowledge of the history of Japan goes. Like, I don't know too much about it. So one of the best things about Shogun, besides how amazing and the writing, the acting, all that stuff, all the good stuff there is that it's not just entertaining, but it's teaching me about all of these different historical events, just how people talk to each other, the different political structures. It's very Game of Thrones-esque in that way. And this is right up my alley for TV shows. So before I pass it along to you guys, just to give your piece about what you think, and then we'll get into the specifics. One other thing I really wanted to point out was just that I want to get out in front of it that we're probably going to be messing up the pronunciations here. This is complicated, and it's not just because it's a Japanese historical TV show, but there's so many characters, so many regions, so many lords, so many, servants. Like, it's going to take us a little bit. Hopefully by the end of the next podcast, we'll have everything down. Cause I went as far as to create a mock-up little, family trees just to see if I had an understanding. I'm sure I have some things wrong. And again, if pronunciations aren't there, we apologize. We're going to do our best here. And naturally some nicknames are going to come out of the woodwork too. But overall, I'm ready to freaking dive into this. This was probably the strongest 1-2 episode start of a series I can remember in a really long time. This show has been circled on my calendar for, I don't know, whenever it was announced, and I have so many things to say, but I'll let you guys give your piece before we can start breaking down the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was the anticipation and the hype leading up to it, but what Luke said, absolutely in love with it after just 2 episodes. And to build on what you were saying, it is so amazing to see how they view life, how they view purpose, what they should do with their life. And the consequences if they go beyond where they should. And like Luke was saying, we're anime fans, but it's different because everything there is so exaggerated, and this is almost like a historical, not a documentary, but it seems pretty damn accurate. So it's learning, like I'm learning so much, but I'm also having so much fun watching, and the character relationships and just the need to follow the rules and the traditions is it's such a chess match. It's amazing, and I love it already. I'm obsessed with the characters. I think they're so cool. I'm so ready to talk about them and maybe what their futures are, and I think we're gonna have like maybe some death pools going here because it feels like there's gonna be a lot of deaths, and I can't be more excited for a show after 2 episodes.
And just to jump off the back of that point, we don't know like how close this is linked to actual history. So, and I'm avoiding looking up anything. So, if you know like certain characters are going to die and certain characters are going to elevate their status, and like if you know for a fact and you're looking at it from like a historical perspective, I would suggest we're not the community to. We don't want to see those things. Is what I'm saying. This is going to be.
Don't spoil us.
I believe it's going to be a limited series, like 1 season show. So it's not like we're going to have an off season where we can have it spoiled for us. But they did say that they're going to leave the door open for a possible season 2 because it's a historical drama. It can continue regardless of who dies and who lives. So, but just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, we don't know the Japanese history, so we don't know what Shogun is going to emerge and who's going to die and all that stuff.
The geography alone, just to go off that, like Ajiro versus Izu versus Edo, like I don't really know any of those. And I'm kind of excited to learn as we go, but there will be questions. So clarification would be nice if you want to leave a comment.
Spoiler free.
Yes.
Yeah, do your best to be spoiler free. When we're covering Masters of the Air, we've had a lot of people, awesome comments, awesome Discord comments, giving us some background information without spoiling us. We have had a few people spoil us. We try not to look at it, but the background information, all that extra stuff, we love it. So if you guys want to join the Discord, tweet at us, comment on our YouTube channel, whatever it is, we appreciate all of that. But yeah, so I agree with everything you guys just said. I don't want to beat a dead horse already with the two of you and how much you've already said, but I want to talk about just like right away when this show starts, the visuals, you could tell they're not messing around. I was like, whoa, when the set pieces, the visuals, everything about it has been amazing this entire 2 episodes. The acting, like you guys said, amazing. Our boy, are we going to say Sanada for his last name?
Yeah, Hiroyuki Sanada, who's the top of the call sheet. He is unbelievably good and compelling. Like this might be his career-defining role, and he has been in 30 different movies that I love him in every second of it. Like this might be the role for him that when I 20 years from now think about this actor, this is who I'm going to picture, and he was incredible.
So yeah, Hiroyuki Sanada is a legend. We could just name every single thing that we love from him. Luke had an awesome tweet with everything that he loved. We could just go forever naming everything, so we're not going to, but he's already phenomenal. You can just tell. John Blackthorne's actor. I recognized him from Peaky Blinders. He has like the same kind of quirks in the beginning that Barney did from Peaky Blinders, and that's kind of how I recognize him. Even though he had the long hair and the beard, it just like clicked for me, and I love that actor. Rodriguez, all these people are doing phenomenal stuff already in the first 2 episodes, and I am super into this. It's very compelling stuff. Let's just get into it. Let's just start talking about it.
Okay. And there's one thing I want to clarify, and I could be so off base with this, but are they trying to show us that when they're speaking English, they're speaking Portuguese?
Yes. So
because there is one time where they actually speak Portuguese, like in subtitles, like people in the background, which really threw me off. But it's very heavily implied that anytime there's a translator involved, whether it's Mariko or what is his name, Father Martin, they're speaking Portuguese.
It says they're speaking Portuguese.
John has a line when he's with the prisoners where he's saying, and I'm fluent in Portuguese, so he is speaking Portuguese. That's why Mariko says like senor and in like Rodriguez calls him Ingles and everything like that. I believe, yes. It took me a while though before I realized that.
So how we're going to do this is we're going to go through the first episode, and it's going to be split into two buckets. Rather than us jumping around scene by scene, everything's pretty isolated, and it's surrounding our main two characters, John Blackthorne and everything he does, and then, of course, Toranaga, who's going to be probably the majority of all the scenes in the show going forward. But right before we start the first scene, there is that little write-up, Star Wars style, where they give you all the background info and the context that you need to know what the setting is. And this story is going to take place in the year 1600 in Japan. Shout out to Blue Eyed Samurai, because that's also very similar age. It might be within a decade of this. I don't know. Yep. Either way, this is the Edo period in Japanese history. So it's also going to be important that there's going to be a lot of religions in this show, whether it's Catholicism, Protestantism, or whatever they actually didn't really clarify here, but I think it's implied that when the Taiko is dying, they refer to the Buddha. So Buddhism is what we're going off of until we get more information. So forgive us for the religious things. None of us are really super religious, but that is a very key part in this and a lot of characters' motivations and their backstories. So we're going to try and keep that straight for you guys. But what we find out right away is that the Taiko, who's the leader of Japan, he died a year ago in the year 1599. We get that flashback in episode 2. But what's important, and this is going to be the backbone of the entire show's plot, is that with the leader gone now, there's an underaged heir who I forget how old he is, but he's definitely like under 10. He's around that age. And there are 5 very powerful men in Japan that are going to be vying for control. This is very Game of Thrones-esque. I love this stuff, the political strife, all that's going to go into this show, and why I have such high expectations, because I thought all the seeds and all the world building that happens right away is so excellent. So with that being said, jumping into the actual show itself, we open up and Lord Toranaga is actually on his way to the Osaka Castle, which is where the Taiko usually lives. And he's being summoned there to talk to the councilmen. And there's going to be 5 councilmen, including himself. We'll deep dive that in a little bit. These are the regent rulers right now. While the heir of the previous Taiko is coming of age, these 5 rulers are supposed to, or these 5 councilmen are supposed to rule in his place. Just similar to, spoiler, like Cersei Lannister is like the regent for a little bit in Game of Thrones. Like she's ruling on behalf of her son until they're of age. And that's the whole premise here. And that just makes for excellent storytelling, because that leads to backstabbing, truces and alliances, all that good stuff. So I want to just open up the dialogue to everything from Toranaga seeing Osaka Castle, going into the councilman's room and having that conversation with them, all before his one of his clansmen steps out of line and basically gets a little slap on the wrist, which that dude's an idiot. And his name is Todayoshi. I just literally in my family tree that I made, I just labeled him as an idiot because he just so dumb. But it did get the point across about the level of respect that is in this political atmosphere and just in the core of the Japanese culture. And I thought it got the point across really well. But let's talk about all these councilmen in this conversation. What you guys think?
So immediately, my first vibe was that Toranaga is, without a doubt, the best fit to be, the next Shogun, right? Because everybody seems threatened by him. As soon as he walks into the room, he's like, this is new seating. And the rest of the council's like, yeah, well, we're a little suspicious of you. And it's not suspicion, it's fear and jealousy almost. They know that he could be the best fit, and their best chance of getting a seat was come together, and we're going to go against him. So Toranaga being a prisoner in Osaka, knowing this, walking in, being as nice as possible, like yelling at his own Todayoshi, like, how dare you accuse Ishido of saying all those things to me. I mean, it just sets down that he knows exactly what to do and he knows all the rules, but he's still going to play along because there is tradition and there is the right thing to do in their eyes. So amazing that he willingly gives himself up basically as a prisoner. I mean, Hiramatsu's saying this too, like, we all know this. We're basically waiting for our deaths like a few days away, but he doesn't care because he's the best.
Right. So after like the leverage is all presented, whatever, and they're fighting back and forth, we get some information drops here that Toranaga's fiefdom has been increasing at an insane rate, and fiefdom's just like an equivalence for power and just like how many, I think it's like actually how many soldiers or whatever you have under your control, or it's the territory. It's basically just your power, like I want to say your power level, but like how influential you are. And then he's also, and correct, I don't think we got anything else on this, but he's consented to 6 different marriages, which I'm not really sure what's going on there. Maybe that'll come back into play, but it just seems like from the councilman's perspective, Toranaga's scheming for the power. And from what we've seen and what we're told, that's not really the case. He actually has a good head on his shoulders. He doesn't even want to be the leader of Japan. He just more wants to live and be influential and then make sure that the heir of his friend, the Taiko, is raised to power at the appropriate time. So all of that's really coming out now, and because of like this back and forth where we don't know who's really in the right or wrong, Toranaga has one of his clansmen who gets slighted at the fact that they're just like talking shit basically, and he steps out of line. This is who I mentioned earlier, Todoyoshi, not too important because he's eventually going to be dead by the end of this episode. He's an idiot, but this was very important to show the whole idea about seppuku and how much. And seppuku is just basically, I think it's just an honorable way of dying with the samurai sword. You kill yourself. All of this is like kind of being shown at a really, really rapid rate, but it's also like really well done. Like I feel like everybody got the point. We know how the levels of respect, how important they are, and we get the tradition sense all within this quick conversation that we have that sets the stage for the entire series. So I thought this scene was a great way to open up and then just show some of the political back and forth that we're going to be experiencing throughout this season.
There's going to be a lot of stuff that we want to talk out. So one of the things I wanted to ask you guys is when the gentleman says, you know, he comes out of line, he starts saying, you're disrespecting Toranaga, and then he says, sorry, and what is it called, Luke? Did you have the name of it?
Seppuku? Like commit seppuku?
Yeah, so at first I thought that just meant like he was giving up his son, but it means he would be killing himself and anybody in his bloodline, like literally removing his bloodline.
And
not allowing his name to pass on to future generations because he disrespected his liege.
Right.
Usually,
okay. Wow. Which is, again,
crazy.
Going to what you guys were saying about honor and everything. And I really don't want to do this too often. I don't want to talk about Game of Thrones too much, but Toranaga is really reminding me duty, honor, Ned Stark. You know, all I care about is making sure the heir, even though he doesn't really, with the whole Joffrey thing, we're not going to get into that kind of stuff, but he just seems like somebody that they're trying to make look bad so that they can just push him out when we know, and they could swerve us, but we know from what we've seen that he is full on duty, honor, freaking badass. But he has a really close relationship with Taiko, and, you know, spoilers for the episode 2, but, you know, the Taiko actually originally said, I want to give it to you. You know, I want you to be the sole regent. And Ned Stark, like, he says, well, I don't know about that. He's very, very smart. He knows, and whether the Taiko was testing him or not, he already had his plan for the 5 regents, and, you know, Toranaga says, you're freaking smart. Now, the one thing I will say that he a little bit differs on Ned Stark, and I'm not going to say Ned Stark's not smart, but Toranaga has like the schemes. Like he knows what he's doing to do the power plays. Like Ned didn't care enough for any kind of power plays. He's keeping himself alive with the heir's mother, but also we'll find out with John Blackthorne.
Yeah, and that's a good question because they said, you know, you have 7 days to return Lady Yoshida. Now, if Toranaga actually kidnapped Lady Yoshida, I feel like it would be different because that would be him like making a power play. But I feel like he's genuinely just telling the truth and being like, I don't even know if he's holding her or if she was like,
she's
hey,
just like,
I want to be with my sister while she gives birth, and he's just like, go do it. Like
that's what I mean. I feel like it just seems that way, and he's just okay with it because it kind of gives him a little bit of a power play. But yeah,
keeping him alive.
I perfectly 100% agree with you.
When in doubt, dude, trust Toranaga's head on his shoulders because he's the guy that I'm going to be following till the grave, you know.
Talking about head on shoulders after I just said Ned Stark. I hope that guy stays alive, man. I hope Toranaga stays alive, man.
So do you have something? Go ahead.
I was just going to say this almost second in command of Toranaga, Hiramatsu, They kind of go more into his relationship. Like Todoyoshi is his son. What is it? His son, right?
Todoyoshi is married to his granddaughter.
Granddaughter. Okay, so it's his grandson. By whatever.
Grandson-in-law, I guess, or whatever it would be.
Right.
But yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
So Toranaga says, "Hey, everything that Todoyoshi did, I know Fuji is your granddaughter. I will make sure she stays alive too." But Hiramatsu is even able to go in Toranaga's place and talk for him. Like right in this next scene we get, he's like, "Hey, I have to stay here. I'm a prisoner in Osaka, but you have to go to Ajiro to look for this barbarian ship that they got a note for." So it's just crazy.
A lot of trust.
Oh my god, that'd be so cool to be. I automatically love Hiramatsu just because it's
Yeah.
Toranaga's boy.
He's an absolute beast. I guess he's like the top clansman or the top general, I think is kind of what he's referred to. He's both an advisor and a friend and a general, all the above. He's the man. After my second watch through, I found myself like riding for this guy. So there's going to be a lot to come from him because of his family tree and how important it is to Toranaga's household. So we'll keep talking about him. But Paul, you laid it out perfectly. I thought the writing in this scene was genius because it happens directly after the stakes of this world are really set. We're finding out like this guy's going to kill himself and his whole family just because he disrespected his liege, and then we find out that at that insane level of a crime, Toranaga is still willing to excuse one of his friend's granddaughters. So I felt that did a lot for just Toranaga, like showing the stakes and the tension and like what they're willing to do and how important the leaders are. All of it was like really well done and meticulously put in that order to kind of give the audience like the right vibe of like how everything's going to really be. So overall, Hiramatsu's got my stamp of approval. He seems like he's going to be a homie.
Agreed. And is he also Lady Mariko's husband's father?
No, so Lady Mariko is married to his son.
Right.
Remember later there's that dinner scene where he comes in and says his direct son thinks that he's being recruited to a Toranaga meeting, but he's actually like, no, it's actually Mariko
I
to
just
be a
worded
translator.
that weird. Yeah. Okay. So because I said her husband's father, but yeah, that's it, right? So,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
all right. Cool.
Go even in more of a culture shock, like right in this scene where Fuji has the knife to her throat, holding her baby. Todoyoshi saying, "Oh, I'm your husband. Listen to me." Mariko comes in and she says, "I know you feel the pull of death. Like I know you want its mercy. I know you have no purpose after your husband has just tarnished your family. But believe me, if Toranaga gave you a purpose, then like." You must follow that. And it's like, oh my god, you want the release of death? You want to like follow your family? It is so crazy that that's what they yearn for, and they don't just because it's duty. So it's insane.
That is like the next direct scene in this bucket, so we'll keep talking about it. What's even better is in hindsight, after rewatching this scene, you know how important this is to Mariko as well, because her father had to go through this whole process, and she was the one that was spared in that situation. So at first, I was thinking that she's just doing her duty to get this done for Toranaga, but in hindsight, it wasn't like that at all. She actually felt empathetic towards the whole thing. So this was a really good scene, and Lady Mariko like really grew on me the second watch, and I think she's the third build actor. So
she's gonna be big.
Yeah, she's gonna be like one of the storylines. It's like the heart of the show.
Yeah, and I was taking it with her character like she is tied down by the fact that she got married. Yeah, she has so much potential to do things, and even her husband is like, "Why are you doing anything outside of this house?" So I feel like he's going to be a problem, big problem for us this season.
I don't like
majorly. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Hiramatsu's
Can you Yeah, I mean, can you imagine having your child in your arms? And then the father being like, "Yo, man, you gotta give me that kid. I gotta die. He's gotta die just because I accidentally talked when I shouldn't have. Sorry." Like, it's crazy. I mean, and yeah, I wouldn't blame her for being like, "You shouldn't me? Don't take my son." Like, come on. Oh, it's crazy. It's really.
I could not believe what I was watching because I didn't expect that at all. I was like looking at Dave, who I watched with, and I just like, is this happening? Are we about to watch a baby get murdered in the first episode? And the fact that they had to bring this back at the end, I was pissed because I was like, I already mentally got over that, and now I have to relive this again because it freaks me out the idea that they're really going to end their whole bloodline, and then Fuji's just going to be alive. I don't know if that character is going to be important going forward because she is the favored granddaughter of Hiramatsu, so she might be a character that's important. But yeah, this was emotional.
That was tough.
Something to add on to that scene too. At the very end, Mariko grabs her necklace, which is the cross. And I am constantly trying to figure out if Mariko really does want to follow her faith of
she's Christianity.
Yeah, Christian, right? All right. So, like, I can't tell because she even has a line later on when she's talking to Toranaga saying, you know, I have more than one heart. My religion won't conflict with my duty to you and everything like that. So it's just something to have in the back of your head. I can't tell. I feel like she really does want to follow the religion. Maybe it's because she doesn't have a purpose right now after her father, but crazy.
Yeah. My thoughts are that 100%, Paul. I think that she found religion after her father. It seems similar. The timeline seems about right. Yeah. I think she said 14 years ago. I honestly think she is devout to her religion, and I can see just in my head the wheels are turning that, you know, Blackthorn and her are going to fall in love, and it's going to be Christian and Protestant and that whole thing because she's going to be around him at all times because she has to translate. You can already see the little bit of a tension there. Like I said, her husband's going to be a problem. She has so much more to give, and we're going to see how much she has to give to this show.
Yeah. So the last two things that happen for this bucket before we can move on to Blackthorn are we see the conversation that Toranaga has with the heir. Like, he's like messing around. The first time you kind of see him be a little jovial, which was nice. Like, get that upbeat. He's like playing the games or whatever. And the more important and fun conversation is when the caretaker, I don't know how important she is, but she comes in and she's somebody that has seen the relationships of Toranaga, the Taiko, all this, because of how comfortable she is talking to Toranaga and the things that she goes on to say, which is definitely worth just bringing up real quick. The fact that they're both kind of like, Ashido is like stepping out of line. Like, why is he trying to basically blame Toranaga and start this whole civil war? Because that's the opposite of what the Taiko stood for. And then they start talking about his lineage and why he's like feared among the leadership, because his true surname is Minowara, which is just like the name of the ruling class of the last time there was a shogun in Japan, which is going to be so important because he's got like the royal blood that I'm sure there's some nationalists that would be okay with him taking over as the next shogun, because there hasn't been one. The title's been empty for a while, and there's probably a whole faction that wants to put him into place. So this was like a really good conversation just to kind of see what it's not all one track minded where everybody's with the council, right? There is this little bit of a split amongst the people. So this was a good scene, I thought, just getting that across and bringing up his lineage and dropping the name of the show for the first time, which I was like, whoa.
They also
he said it.
Yeah, dropped
literally
just a crazy like act that Ishido's like, oh yeah, Ishido's probably gonna kill you and then kill the heir and then he's gonna rise to power. I'm like, we were just seeing how important this heir was, talking about the Taiko, and this is his son. Everybody talks about the Taiko with such utmost respect, and to even say that, you know, he's just going to kill his son like it's no big deal. It's like, okay, so they're tiptoeing around everything. They're saying one thing, but in the back of their mind, they're completely ready just to kill whoever they need to step up. So
depending on which region it is, Paul, like, obviously, we find out that certain ones care about the money from the Christian supporters. Ishido just seems like he wants power. I mean, whether he respected the Taiko or not, he didn't have that scene like Toranaga did to show that they were any kind of friends or anything, but he would take him out in 2 seconds, meaning Toranaga, the son, anybody, to make sure that they become the leaders. And for Shogun itself, is that like a title that technically would be respected over Taiko if it was like restored?
Yeah, I think
is that what
more
she was
like,
trying to say?
Like God Emperor. Like it's the highest level that they say that a mortal can achieve. So it's like something that, and I think there's a chance that maybe it's because the Taiko didn't come from the right bloodline. Like he could only escalate to like a certain level. And I'm sure the politics of that like are pretty defined, but we just don't know because they haven't shown it or told us yet. But that's what my understanding is right now. Like I don't think the last Taiko could have become a shogun I think there
Right.
needs to be more there.
No, I believe it is the bloodline, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So last scene for this bucket, which doesn't need any conversation because we covered it and we can move over to John Blackthorne, is just Mariko being summoned by Toranaga at the end of the episode, and they're talking about her translating abilities. And we already covered like her backstory with her father having to deal with the seppuku that Fuji has to deal with now and how it's similar, and he's trying to just guide her a little bit. And then the takeaway is that she's going to work as like the translator to help deal with the barbarian John. So we can leave that because it's going to be more interesting when we talk about the beginning of episode 2. I want to skip over to the John Blackthorne bucket because this guy, man, like I went back and forth. Like, is this guy have too many hidden motivations? Like, is he actually evil? Is he going to be a good character? Like, is he, I don't know. I couldn't really get a grasp on him, but after watching it again, like I really like John. And I don't know if I'm settling on Blackthorne or John. I'm testing it out live here. I think Blackthorne's cooler because shout out Stormlight Archives and the Brandon Sanderson world right there.
Totally.
But this guy gets set up as basically an Englishman who is working on a Dutch boat, and he has all these motivations, and we can break that down as we want. But the bottom line is that this ship, the crew is in shambles, and they're all going to die. Like, they lost their whole fleet, and then they end up stumbling into Japan and being caught by the soldiers. That's like the first, I think, 5 minutes of the show. So there's some things there. And then we're shouting out Peaky Blinders characters, so we're shouting out Uncle Charlie, who is the original captain before John takes over.
Mm-hmm.
Just wild to see the absolute ruin of men that they have become. You know, you were saying they had 5 ships, now there's barely one. So they are like starving, they have scurvy, all that other stuff. Talking about how they traveled through the Magellan Strait, and I had to look that up because I didn't realize what it was, but it is so important. It's literally just a sea route in southern Chile that is considered so important because, one, it's way quicker. You can literally go through the land. It is a series of bodies of water that, if you follow them correctly, you can cut going south down around South America completely. And I can't imagine how valuable that was. They even go to say because they can duck other Portugal bases and stuff like that by going through the strait. So, one, the fact that they were able to navigate through enemy territory like that, you know, the Erasmus is completely destroyed, but John is still able to find the white sand on the bottom. He can't read the stars, otherwise he would. Like, he is so intelligent, it's amazing. So he is without a doubt. If you were talking about going back and forth, I friggin' loved him from the get, and unless he becomes a real dickbag, I think he's gonna be my guy. Like, he's so charismatic for being starving and dead. It's unbelievable.
Would you like to call him John Blackthorne Snow?
I was thinking about calling him JB, honestly, but
JB's not bad, dude.
We'll settle on it by the end of this episode. We'll all try it out. What flows the best? But I can't believe you don't remember Magellan Strait from just the different high school and middle school history class. That's new to you?
Yeah, well, I didn't really do well.
Yeah, John Blackthorne, JB. What order we're gonna go with here? I kind of like JB, Paul. Cosmo Jarvis is doing it for me. I mean, I loved him as Barney in Peaky Blinders. I really don't think I remember him from anything else that I've watched, but I really like his acting in the first 2 episodes here. And he has a lot of actors to work with when he's speaking with Mariko, when he's speaking with Toranaga, when he's speaking with his entire crew, and then everyone who has him prisoner. He has different scene partners, and he's killing it. And, I mean, they're all killing it, but he's killing it with them. And to your point, Luke, you know, whether you're saying, does he have his own agenda? Well, it kind of reminds me of The Last Kingdom here, where we have Christians here. They didn't talk about Protestants in The Last Kingdom, but, you know, it would be like Christian and pagan, but Christians, Protestant, like John Blackthorne is Protestant, so he wants to get rid of all the Christians. He's going to be on the side of Toranaga for now because it seems that the Christians are trying to get rid of Toranaga.
Yep.
So to us, it seems like the Christians are going to be the antagonists of this season. So far, Mariko is Christian, and that's cool, but it seems like everyone we're meeting that's Christian is going to be an antagonist. Like if Father Martin...
See, I think Father Martin has some redeeming qualities. I also think
I do-
Rodriguez does, but he might be too far gone because he's working with the Spaniards. He's already like betraying his country. So there's things there for those two characters, but I agree. They're painting it out to be those are the more antagonistic characters.
And it won't be cut and dry. Like we
No,
always say
definitely not.
that. It's not going to be black and white. Father Martin definitely has things that we see in these two episodes that make you think, okay, he's not pure evil, obviously. He's not a bad guy. The translation, he does it 100%. And he's speaking with John Blackthorne, and they are enemies, and he's saying, I will not bias this. I will speak the truth. And Mariko, obviously we'll talk about this in a little bit, but Mariko confirms it. So he obviously does have redeeming qualities.
Yeah, for sure. And
I mean,
like
it could be Luke that he knows Mariko's there and would sandbag him if he did.
It's
look
possible.
Like the POS.
It's possible, but I feel like I trust her moral compass, and she really trusts him. Because I don't know though, because she's also anti-JB.
Because he's the priest. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You gotta, yeah. It depends. Like it's almost like the scene where Blackthorne JB is talking to Mariko, and she says, "Don't speak out of turn." But he's basically saying, like, "Listen, I know you're Christian, I know you're devout, but just think about their agenda too. Think about what they want." And she obviously pushed them aside for now. But
yeah,
maybe he's telling us too. He's saying, "Yo, you like Father Martin?" We'll see.
Well, it's obvious by this point, like through the show, like the whole idea about the translator is going to be so important because not everybody knows Japanese, and like there's got to be ways to communicate with these barbarians and all this thing, and the Portuguese, like that's going to be so important. I really like that plot point, and it really comes out in John's first encounter with the Japanese who are the ones that capture his boat. Like you see all the crewmen are freaking out. They don't know what to do. He's the self-appointed leader after Uncle Charlie offed himself. So they don't know how to communicate to each other. The leader of, I believe at this point it's Omi, who is going to be the nephew of a very important clansman here under Toranaga, and he's known as Bushigi. And this is a name that is the hardest for me to really remember, so forgive me if I mispronounce it every once in a while, but Yabushigi and then Omi, his nephew. These are going to be very two key players under the Toranaga household that aren't directly like 100% riders for Toranaga, and you see that throughout these two episodes. But in order to get that information, we have the first obstacle of the translation, and at this point, we don't have a good translator, so Omi just grabs a random dude off the side and was like, yo, you know some broken Portuguese, like tell me what he's saying. And they go back and forth, and it ends with a nice little what I guess a Badiatus, shout out Spartacus, like piston scene right on his face because of the disrespect. Like all of this is happening, and he's really just having this rude cultural awakening. Like he's not going to be able to boss these guys around. He's not going to be able to sell his bullshit story about them being merchants. Like they have cannons on the ship. They have all these weapons. So we're finding all this stuff out. I think it's great. And then Omi decides that he called his uncle Yabushigi to come and actually like do a full interrogation here, and just like seeing how like the split between the different religions, like all these people in the village like revere whoever's the leader. Like the one guy comes up and prays to John and gets his head cut off because he's a prisoner. Like you don't do that. Like that is all happening within like a couple minutes, and I just thought it was really just well done. Like I'm gonna say for almost every scene, because like spoiler alert, this is one of my freaking favorite two episodes ever of just like a start to a political drama like this. Like all of this is so well done, and so just give me what's your guys' first takes on Omi, and I guess before we get to the actual interrogation full on with Yabushiki later.
Omi was obsessed. Well, he's not obsessed, but he was speaking to his mother saying, hey, your father's died. You need to step up. If you provide, you might get your own fief right now. So he's not trying to fuck up. He's trying to become like a made man with the territories to rule. So he knows that his uncle Yabu, I might call him Yabu because it's a little bit shorter, is a powerful man. He is respected. He is right now in charge because, Toranaga's gone. They get into it later. Yabu told Toranaga not to go because he knew he was going to die and everything like that. So he's preparing for this battle of control, and he was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to be ready to lead. Omi's a little... He's eager, but maybe a little too quick on the sword and quick on the piss, if I'm honest.
Dude, clean cut, though. It was just like, right off.
I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
Are we talking Yabashigi yet or not yet?
Yeah, let's just open it up to that because this kind of leads right into that conversation, and this is where we actually have a more full conversation because of the Portuguese priest that is a translator who obviously hates John because he recognizes him as the enemy and as a Protestant. So it's like a broken translation that's going back and forth. But I thought Yabashigi came off as pretty competent here, like asking about proof and not just taking it at face value and understanding some of the body language that John was doing, like with throwing the cross on the ground, which was genius. That was the only way he was going to be able to directly interact with him. But yeah, what was your read on that scene, Jimmy?
Yeah, so I just thought it was so interesting, everything you were saying about the translation. Like, they're literally, these prisoners from the boat are in this pit, and I guess it's Omi speaking, and he's saying, just bring them all up, not one at a time. And they don't know. They think that he's saying one at a time, and Blackthorn's like, I'm coming, and they're like, no, everybody, and it's like, and it's not hostile. It might turn hostile anyway, but at first when they're saying come up, it's not hostile. It's just saying come up, we need to talk, and they don't know what it's saying, so it turns hostile, and then Blackthorn comes up, and and then it obviously gets worse. But to me, Yabashigi, he's definitely competent. Now, to me, he's like everything you need to know, not everything, but a lot that you need to know about him so far was taught before he even gets to Osaka. You know, you learn that he's a schemer. He's definitely a schemer. He's like Ishida where he just wants to grow his power. But you learn a lot where Omi is told that Yabashigi did not even come to the village when his brother died. He wasn't there for the funeral of his brother, but he's there because there's probably a power play to be had, right? So that's obviously something. The competence is there. He does seem rational in certain ways, like you said, Luke. And also, a little bit later when we get to, still before they get to Osaka, but when it's dealing with the boat, he has plans, but it seems, and it's against Toranaga pretty much. He's saying, Toranaga's a dead man. I don't need to worry about him anymore. And then when number 2 comes over, he's at first like, oh, shit. Like, I don't want to do this. But then with honor, you have to. And our boy pulls the sword like, oh, you're not honoring our boy? But again, you know that he's not fully with him.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. He, like you were saying, he was planning ahead. He was planning as if Toranaga was no longer alive.
Now that's interesting. So should I take that as he's planning ahead and he's being smart, or should I take that as he's planning ahead and being a schemer? How'd you guys take it? Like, and when I say schemer's not necessarily bad. I'm not adding the bad connotation to it, but I'm meaning like I'm taking him like schemer in a bad way.
I think he's just reacting to the situation around him right now, but it's viewed through like a pessimistic lens because he's anti-Toranaga, like in some sense. But I don't think like he is involved with any of like this at this point, like having Toranaga killed. Like, I don't know. I'm more thinking that he's just reacting and he's talking to his family and saying like, yeah, like there's an opportunity here. I'm going to try and take it. But
he's playing multiple sides.
Yeah,
he's playing multiple sides because of Ishido.
And he had
in episode 2.
He had direct orders to wait in Edo for Toranaga. So I don't know if he is breaking those orders because he is scheming, like you're saying, or breaking those orders because he believes they're dead orders, right? They were orders of a dead man, so it means nothing anymore. I think he's smart. Like we were all saying, he's able to not just kill this barbarian right away. He knows there's value there. He knows there's so much value in the ship. Like even Omi was talking about, the change of the seat of power and what good 500 firearms will do and everything like that. So, in the back of your mind, everybody wants to be king, right? Everybody wants to hop up.
Unless you're Toranaga, dude. Unless you're a good guy like Toranaga.
The last thing
handed it to him. He said no.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say about just the Yabu and the translator and John Blackthorn theme, Blackthorn scene was, it really just showed you that every Portuguese priest or Portuguese man in general that John's going to come across, immediate like hatred in between those two. Like they do not get along, and the translator, the priest is saying, pirate bad, pirate. Kill pirate, he's dead. Here, he needs to die. So immediately, that Yabushige isn't John Blackthorne's friend, but he might be his best way out. Any Portuguese that he sees is his real enemy. Yabushige must be his way out of this death trap he's in right now.
Yeah, and it was a good takeaway because I like that these evil guys or some I'll say evil, but like they're not one dimensional. Like they're saying they're looking for proof. They're trying to talk it out and actually think through the implications. It doesn't feel as one note, and I thought that came across well here. And then we get even more. I love Yabu, by the way. Can we full send for that one?
Yeah, Yabu.
Yabu seems easy. It's like if his name was Robert and he's calling him Rob. Like it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So Yabu has these two quick scenes, nothing to really dissect. I just think it's funny. Is the boiling one of the people? Yeah, one of the prisoners alive is wild. Shout out to One Piece again because wow, like that was. I don't want to spoil anything for Jimmy there, but I didn't know how like important of like a imagery of like boiling people alive as a form of torture or execution is in Japan, but it was shown in One Piece at one point, so like I guess it's like really like a cultural thing at the time. And then we also have that weird scene with Kiku, the courtesan, where to me I was thinking, was this just like the birth of like cuckoldism in Japan? Like I don't know what the hell was going on there, but tell me what you guys took from that.
I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that the death thing was interesting, where he's like waiting for death, and he wants to say, like, you know, the guy was about to die. I am letting him die. I want to see what happens at that moment. And he says, like, nothing. Again, nothing. I thought that's an interesting character trait, something to him. But I don't know what to say about the sex scene stuff, where, I mean, you would think that she was... Like, everything we've seen so far when it comes to the sexism and the men and the women thing, that you would think he would flip shit when she said, I'm going to take the younger guy. Right. Mm-hmm. But he says, go ahead. And I don't know. If listeners, if you have any context to this, let us know.
But let's get the Paul sexiest scene in here. Sorry, take that out. But go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. The only thing I got from that is either one, Yabu doesn't have interest in courtesans, or... maybe he got mutilated in a war and he can't use his junk, and that's why he's just kind of watching her like touch this other guy. I had no idea. It also went on to say the courtesans are just, they know they got to be out there. They got to be intriguing in a way and do something that they've never seen before. Yeah. You know, we were just talking about Blue Eye Samurai. That's all I'm thinking about right now, and all of that. So I thought that was wild. The boiling alive scene, I fucking hated. I got physically nauseous. They showed it. They showed so much of it, and the only interesting thing was Yabu talking to Omi the following day. I believe he was like, "Oh, wow, you know, he was stronger than most Christians. You know, give me a poem about it." And I was like, "Wow, okay, that's something I didn't see coming." But Yabu really respected it and really liked it, and he thought there was beauty behind. Like, he's looking for the beauty in the moment before death, couldn't find it, but there is still a beauty there, you know. So he's such a complicated character, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
I am interested in him, is what I'll say. Like, I don't think he's gonna get redeemed. Probably he might be too far gone, not enough episodes to really do that. But I do think he's an interesting character, and I like that there's somebody in Toranaga's household that isn't fully 100% for Toranaga. It's just another interesting perspective. But let's keep moving along here. We're almost at the end of the first episode, and it'll be easy to flow right into the next one. But the next day, Omi gets rewarded for his help in all of this. But more importantly, now I can say it, the homie Hiromatsu shows up, and he's there to make sure that there's no scheming going on with this foreigner in the barbarian ship. And he's like, all right, give it all to us. And luckily Yabu like complies, because he seemed like he was going to push back a little bit or maybe lie about the money if they didn't already know. But there was some sort of spy network that made them have the knowledge that there's all this stuff in there. So before we can like, I guess, move on to Rodriguez, like we also find out that Toranaga is known as the leader of foreign affairs, include that, and that's just like a blanket term for any sort of political international conversations with anybody from a different country. So that's important because that's going to keep coming up. But I want to keep going here. Let's talk about Rodriguez, because John gets like all cleaned up, whatever, and they put him in the nice kimono. Like all of that stuff happens. He's being taken care of to some level, unlike the other prisoners. But they go to the port and they meet this Spaniard named Rodriguez who speaks both Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese. Like he speaks it all. He's clearly been ingrained in the culture enough to now he's trusted by them, and like they trusted him to take John, who's like a valuable prisoner, to the boat. And what their whole idea is that they're going to bring John to Osaka, the capital, to actually talk to Toranaga, because he wants to interrogate him himself and find out like all the good information. So let's just open it up to basically, this is going to be a bigger conversation, but just like all of it. Like when they get onto the ship, like John has his moment of shining as a actual pilot, the name of the episode, and like, you know, driving the ship and saving them, basically, all the way through them searching for Rodriguez and Yabu actually going down and saving him before he kind of gains John's respect at the end, which that was a really cool moment for me. But this is just like that last chunk of the rest of episode 1. So Rodriguez opinions, and then we could take it from there.
Rodriguez, I don't know like how I feel about him in the story, but watching him, he is without a doubt one of my favorite characters.
The funniest by far.
He's got lines for days, and like my favorite quote of the episode, he's telling John how to say sorry, how to bow, and everything like that. And he's like, "Goshi kudasari to all the shitting samas." And I'm like, fuck. He's just like shitting on them right to their face. But he knows that they don't really know, because he's the language guy. He's a translator. He's a barrier in between everything. So I thought he's amazing. Immediately just grabs John, goes, "Is my crew all right?" He fucking yells back like in Japanese. He's like, "Oh, good news. They only killed one guy. The rest of your crew is still prisoner." He's just so funny. He's like, "Where am I going?" "Oh, Toranaga." "What's he want with me?" "I don't know. Tickle your balls." Like, he is so funny. I loved him so much. And you know, the scene where he goes overboard, first of all, terrifying to be on a wooden ship with all that storm going on. But John just absolutely shining with commanding the crew, being a real captain. But he was also showing his knowledge about how to navigate and everything along with that. Even quick thinking, seeing Rodriguez go overboard and throwing the wood
paddle,
paddle
he
just, so much happened in such a short scene. I thought he shined so well.
Before you jump in, Jimmy, that what you just mentioned, Paul, about him showing his captain abilities and like why he's valuable, there was a really small moment where Yabu jumps on and starts rowing himself, because after he like realizes, like, he gained his own form of respect for John in that moment, which John doesn't reciprocate until the end of the episode. But I thought that was like a really cool just moment between the two, because Yabu doesn't have too much experience with foreigners, and like John quickly gaining his attention and respect like this was a cool moment.
Yeah, agreed. And you know, someone of his position, meaning Yabu, he's not going to touch that oar unless he has to, or unless he respects the person who's telling him to do it. And obviously shit's hitting the fan, and you respect John at that point when he's saying row, you know? And it's crazy to me when Rodriguez is saying, like, go down there, tell him to row. I would have been like, well, how do you say it? Because he's yelling row at him. And it's like, I don't know if they know that just because it's so, you know. But
he learns it, though, by the end. You saw that, right?
Yeah, he does. He does end up saying it. Yeah, and then Rodriguez, Lost alumni, compelling as hell. I can't stop looking at the screen when he's on there. Paul, you nailed it. But I was about to say, like, damn, can you imagine being like someone that is on a ship at all times and you can't swim, and then you guys would be like, yeah, One Piece, idiot. But
so true.
But I mean, seriously, it still makes me go, Jesus. Like, you're in the middle of that crazy storm, and John's like, or he asks John, can you swim? And he's like, yeah, you can't. And he's like, oh, I'd rather die fast, you know, if I'm going to fall in. But unbelievable scene, great scene. And then when it comes to the cliff, Yabu gets points there. He does. I mean, at first you can tell that it's Yabu's just like, all right, this guy's shitting on me. Like, he's telling his man, like, you know what he's doing. He wants me to do it because and the point where he has the sword and he's going to make the decision, he's going to take his own life or he's going to let the water take him. You can see it in Cosmo, I believe, right? Cosmo Jarvis is the actor for JB's eyes, when he's watching him. He's like, geez, like, that's another one of that's where he starts getting the respect. And then, he finishes the task. He's about to do it. The rope hits his shoulder, and then he sees that the task can be done, so he finishes the task. And yeah, I mean, there is a mutual respect there. And they, even though it does seem like Yabu's going to be antagonistic, and he does have certain qualities, obviously. JB and Yabu, to your point, Paul, I mean, they're going to work together. Whether they're fully homies or not, I'm not going to call Yabu a homie, but to those two together, he saved them twice.
Mm-hmm.
He saved his life twice. So,
and
I don't know about trust, but they're going to work together.
John's reaction, you killed it. It was John's reaction to Yabu's almost senpuku.
Seppuku, yeah.
Like
seppuku, yeah.
It's talk about a culture shock again. Like he couldn't imagine what he just saw. He's like, why did he just do that? Oh my God, he was going to choose his own way out. So there was so much respect or awe or unbelieving. I don't know what it was, but you know.
And then he bows to him.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's the first time he does it, right? Like to anybody.
Yeah.
So I loved that cliff scene, man. So much happened without being said. It was nuts.
Mm-hmm. And then just to take it home, like after the rescue of Rodriguez, and we're finished with that, the cliffside, we find out that Rodriguez found the captain's log that basically details all the crimes that they were doing, and he says to him, I'm going to give this to the Portuguese, I'm just giving you the warning because you basically just saved my life.
Yeah.
And of course, right away, they start going at it, like, he whips out the gun and says, like, don't touch me, like, this is going to happen. Which I didn't see it going that way because I thought Rodriguez was going to be pretty grateful, but that's something we could talk about if we want. But then what Rodriguez ends up saying after all of John's like barbarian and savage talk, he says, go up there and look at this capital that we're about to roll into. You're telling me that your part of the world is the peak of civilization. Go up there and look and experience. And it's just like this kind of cool, magical moment. You're going over the city, did not realize how big it is, or you can have that many people in the 1600s in one spot. That is an insane visual that we got to see with like a really cool camera overview. And then like at the same time you have Rodriguez's voiceover and he says, what kind of man do you think wields power in a place like this? And that's like very Game of Thrones-esque, like they're talking about like the double think and the double, like all of this. So I just thought it was a masterful way to end the episode, or just like this storyline. But of course they need to throw in the freaking baby murder again while this is happening and kill my vibes. But besides that, it was a great end of the first episode.
Him just finally seeing all of Osaka and bowing to Toranaga at the very end. It was nuts. Real quick, Rodriguez is kind of narrating as we see Osaka, and it's his line about, it says, it's a saying that people have three hearts, one in the mouth for the world to see, one in the chest just for your friends, and one buried deep where no one can find. And I'm just curious if that was foreshadowing that we're seeing these people's first and second hearts maybe, but there is a third one deep down with their true intentions that maybe we will get in the end. So
exactly.
I loved this first episode. I was obsessed with it.
Last I checked, it was an 8.9 out of 10 on IMDb. For a pilot, that is more than you can expect, and I would even rate it higher than an 8.9. It's like 9.5 to me. I couldn't have asked for more from a pilot, and it is sad that this might only be one season. That kind of dampers a little bit of how much I want them to focus on the world building, but at the same time, it needs to be done, and it's done masterfully here.
Yeah. Totally agreed.
Ready for episode 2?
Let's do it.
So episode 2, Servants of Two Masters, starts in 1599, a year before the events of like our main storyline here. And the whole purpose of this scene is to show us the last days of the Taiko, the previous Taiko. He's literally on his deathbed, surrounded by his family, surrounded by his friends. All of his clansmen are there. Like Toranaga is like front and center, just listening to this man's last words and him saying his goodbyes. So it's like a very emotional scene, and you find out a lot about the Taiko right away. And the most important thing is he also had a good head on his shoulders, where he was spending his entire ruling lifespan trying to stop the inner fighting between the different clans, and that's just not something you necessarily see in the turn of the 16th or 17th century or whatever it is. So this goes a long way, and it really shows you why Toranaga would have respected him and like had this mutual friendship with him. And we did cover a lot of this stuff at the top of the episode, but like the main takeaways are the fact that the Taiko was trying to, I don't know if it was a test or not, like Jimmy said, like offer the sole regency to Toranaga, who shuts it down immediately because all it's going to do is just give space for their enemies to grow and come together against a common enemy, and he doesn't want that for himself and his family, and he also doesn't want that for the heir, because it seems like he truly cares about the heir. So this was just like a really good scene, and I think you see some of the councilmen in the background, but like this is also him presenting the idea of the council of the 5 that are going to lead Japan. And I'm going to use this second, I guess, to give you, we mentioned the other councilmen, but I'll give you the quick breakdown that we get later in the episode, so we can just kind of talk high level about the leaders of current day Japan. So the 5 councilmen that the Taiko is suggesting that run the country after he passes until his heirs of age are obviously the number 1's going to be Toranaga. He wants him to be a part of it. And it seems like he's the outsider compared to the other 4 from what we saw from the first episode. So the 4 that we're going to probably forget most of their names, because I don't know how often they're going to be in it, but the main leader, who we're definitely not, he's going to be a big player, is Ishido, who is the caretaker of the castle, I think is what they say. They go on to say about him. So he's going to be the main face of the council and all the scheming. But the good news is it doesn't seem like they're a front that's united, because there's 2 Christian councilmen, and that's going to be Kiyama and then Ono. And Ono he turned Christian after he got I think they said leprosy, so he almost died, and like a health scare caused him to turn to this new religion. So he's always like covered up, and he's always like hiding and stuff. Kiyama, the other Christian, it's heavily implied that he's only taken up that religion because of greed and ambition, and like how he can use it to get more power. So those 2 are going to be their own faction. And then the one that we haven't gotten much of through the first 2 episodes is Sugiyama, who is there because he's part of the richest family in Japan. So the 5 of these guys are going to be the councilmen of the regions that take over and just run it through until we decide who's the actual true successor is going to be. So all of this is sort of established right here, and that's why I think it works really well after you kind of have the culture introduction from episode 1 to actually getting like the setup of like what the Taiko wanted.
Question for you guys. So right when we see Taiko dying, you know, the whole procession is kind of leaving, and before he asks Toranaga to stay, there you see a priest come up and say, you know, he must receive the sacrament or miss out on God's kingdom. 2 things. One, dude, the sack from Midnight Mass. You remember that?
Yeah. The sack from Midnight Mass, dude. You need that sack.
If you guys hear or remember that one and you were here for that, just you're a real one. So you're a Bingetown homie.
If you're a Bingetown TV fan and you listen to our Midnight Mass coverage, we love you forever. But yeah, the sacrament, the sack.
So, but second off, so like this whole Christianity in Japan is new, right? It's a new idea. I don't know how new, but it's like this priest has to explain the rules of the sacraments to like everybody. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, it is an important part of Japan and its rulers and following it, but it seems like it's just so new. Was this
so the information that we got is that it comes out later that Portugal basically had ownership over Japan since the late 1400s. So ever since then, they've been like the sole traders with Japan in the world. And then we also find out that like the whole idea was the Portugal rulers want to spread Christianity to any lands that don't already have it. So I think it's like kind of been like more than a century, but at the same time, that's very new in terms of a religion.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it seemed to me that, yes, he's allowed to be there because whether he's a priest or not, I guess he was a priest, but they're obviously not Christian, meaning the Taiko, and they push him away when he's saying that. Like, yes, you're allowed to be here and talk about your Christian faith, but he's not Christian, so get out of our face, kind of.
Any other thing you wanted to add, Jimmy, about that early scene?
No, I was just going to say that it is the perfect way to introduce us to these 5 regents. It's just great writing because we have the world building in episode 1, and you know they're lightly introducing us to certain characters, but without just being like, hey, here's 5 regions and here are who they are. It's explained in a way where he's explaining how he's going to appoint them to Toranaga, and Toranaga saying, damn, you're dying and you're smart as shit still. You're still, you know, sharp as hell. So I just thought that was very well done, giving us a nice exposition and a nice world-building situation here without it just being thrown in our face like, here it is, like, you know.
Yeah, it works well as the second episode.
Yeah, so My favorite quote of this episode was Taiko's line to Toranaga right here, and it's super touching. It seems kind of basic at first, but it's super touching, and that was, "The man who stands at the greatest height is the loneliest in the realm." And it has a lot that you can dig through just in that, but then he goes on to say, "I need you to protect my son from his enemies and his friends." Like, there is so much danger surrounding him right now. He is in one of the most dangerous spots. Even though he's just a kid, he's still an heir to one of the most powerful seats. His friends will kill him. So I can't imagine how it feels to be the highest in the realm. Like, that is a crazy, crazy just thought. So I love this line, and it really illustrates how much the Taiko dying will disrupt the world.
Lonely at the top, baby.
Very lonely.
So let's start moving through the episode after we skip back to 1600. And what happens originally is we kind of kick off with Rodriguez, and he's talking to the other Portuguese priests, and some important information comes out in this conversation where Rodriguez is happy to just give him the logbook that's going to implicate JB for all these crimes, but the priests themselves are thinking like 2 levels deep, where they're saying that I think Martin actually goes and shows that Toranaga is like a very thorough man. Like, he puts respect on him. He's like, he's not just going to accept we tell him what's in here. He's going to want a detailed translation of this book. And what it's going to do is tell him about all of our scheming that's going on in the geopolitics world right now. And there's a chance that it's going to really backfire on our country. Japan could start either going to war with us, or like opening up trade to other countries, lowering our take of of all of this trade. So it's basically them being selfish because they're money hungry, and they don't want to share Japan with the world because it's such a lucrative trade opportunity that they have. So Rodriguez is on team, come on, like, be a good person and just turn him over. Like, JB has to go. Like, he's an enemy of the state. So that's just kind of like that beginning part that we have before we still continue following Father Martin, and him going into the throne room with Toranaga and JB just to actually work as a translator, while Mariko's there, supposed to be listening and double checking that he's not being corrupt and actually translating the truth. So I think we can just open the conversation for that whole scene, that whole dialogue, because a lot's going on there. Ishido eventually shows up, but I liked this scene a lot because anytime Toranaga's on the screen, I like it.
Just seeing how truthful and honest Martin is, just translating. I loved him off the bat. He is like a bad guy, quote unquote, because he's, he's Portuguese. He's the one that wants to kill, our boy JB, and the whole thing with they're like secretly trying to rule the world and everything like that. But I'm going to keep calling him Martin too, not Martin.
I love that.
That's why I was laughing.
Yeah. Because he's honest to who he is. Like, it seems like he's actually trying to follow his religion. And also his relationship with Mariko is really interesting. You see right away, he's like, "Oh, I'm always fine if Lady Maria is here." So that's interesting. They almost seem like real love interests, like real close. I don't know how that's going to happen. They got more scenes coming up. But this translation scene was nuts. I couldn't imagine the absolute pressure that JB was feeling, and then especially when Ishido walks in and Martin is like, "Dude, shut up. This is Toranaga. Your captor
Bow
is
quick.
Biggest enemy. Bow quick. Bow
Yeah.
quick."
Bow quick. Now. Yeah. I think it's very interesting, and I want to have the conversation with Martin, baby. Is he what Paul says, or is he what I was thinking, that I alluded to early in the first episode, where is he being this honest outwardly because he knows that Mariko is there to bust his ass if he's not honest? Or is he actually showing us that he is honest?
I'm on team Paul right there, where I think Martin's just a good dude. I think he's going to follow his religion to a fault.
So you think he's a good dude, and you just think that his orders are to make sure the shipments are going, and like when he has a scene with Toranaga later and he's trying to get the stamp of approval and all that kind of stuff. To us, he's against Toranaga, so we say, we don't like the guy, but we do like him, I guess. But antagonistic in a way. He's against Toranaga, but he's still a good guy. It depends on the viewpoint, is what you're going for.
Yeah, it's tough because then when you take into account the black ship and like all that, he is still riding for Portugal. Like he's trying to get things done for them, but I don't think he would like cross lines that would compromise his faith. I think and especially like he genuinely likes Mariko, thinks she was the prize student of his. Like I don't think like he was just showing up for Mariko. I think like he's living his ideals, and she kind of respects him at that way too. And I think she would have something to say about it if he showed any signs of sketchiness, which I don't think he has yet. I'm team Father
That's so
Martin.
funny. All right, well, it looks like we may have lost Paul to some power outage here. We are having a storm, so I think Paul's power went out on him, and I don't know if his battery or what. So whatever. Paul may come back, he may not, but we'll have this fixed for later episodes. So me and Luke are going to ride it till the end here. So what I was going to say, and I'm actually going to be coming at Paul, but Luke, you can defend him.
Sure.
It's funny how things are interpreted based on the lens you're watching. Like, I saw Martin, and I took him like how other TV shows will antagonize a religious figure and make them one of the villains. Obviously certain scenarios with like The Last Kingdom and other things like that. And of course, there's gray everywhere with that. But I saw him as an antagonist. So like when he's talking to Mariko, I'm like, oh, he's like buttering her up. Like he just wants her to say, like, tell him why. Like, because he said, why are you here? Like, why are you being asked to translate? Like, and I'm like thinking that he's just kind of trying to like get some answers out of her through the niceness, like through the nuances of the conversation. When you guys are just like, nah, he likes Mariko, and I could see it that way too. It's just funny how you watch it and how it comes through certain lenses.
Yeah, I'm not willing to die on the hill that Martin is a good guy to his core.
And
but
also, this is where I wanted to come at Paul, and it's not even really coming at him. But I didn't see any kind of relationship thing between Mariko and Martin, where he was saying whatever he said, like a romantic relationship. I just honestly think it's like her looking at a priest. Like, not a fatherly figure, but like a priest that she respects, and him either looking at a student he respects or looking at someone that he's trying to take advantage of in the way for his schemes. If you're looking at it from my view or your view.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have like a hard stance on this, but we're definitely gonna find out soon. I think it's a little bit more compelling to have somebody be that deep into the Portuguese religion and be on the Portuguese side, but not be pure evil, if you want to put it
right.
exactly.
Right.
So like I think it will be more interesting to have him just be to his core, like who he is and like for the religion. So we're gonna find out though.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Martin's a great character. Some other things I took away from this scene though, because I thought that the cinematography of the original conversation between Toranaga and JB before Ishido gets there was fantastic. How it started with Martin was very clearly involved translating back and forth, and like as it got closer to their faces and it started like it just started blending, and it was like English to Japanese. I thought that was so well done, and they're probably going to do that multiple times.
Yeah.
But to me, that was just like, wow, these guys are taking the care. They know what they're doing. They spent the time to build up the translation, and then they can just drop it for our benefit and move on, but it still makes so much sense. Like Martin's still there. So all that was freaking amazing. And then another quote that I loved here was, I think JB was like fighting for his life here, willing to say whatever he wants, where he says through Martin, I can never conceive us being enemies. And then it goes back to Toranaga, and he's like, I can very easily see it. And it's just like such a badass moment where he never loses his cool, and he steals every scene. His dialogue, I don't understand it directly, but like the way he delivers lines is amazing. And like this is one of my favorite scenes of the first two episodes. My favorite scene's coming up in a little bit. Of course, it's going to be starring Toranaga as well. But overall, like this was great. And then Ishido comes into the room and then plays his part like you kind of expect him to do, where he's like disgusted at this barbarian and says like send him to prison.
Yeah. And I just find any translation scene throughout the two episodes so freaking compelling, like you said. And this one was just A+ with how it starts zooming in on Toranaga's face and then John's face, and it, like you said, it's like they're having it's showing it like they're having the conversation, and you're not realizing there's a translator towards the end of it. really, really phenomenal filming.
Yeah. So John gets marched off to prison, and then we kind of skip to night, and we have this Mariko scene where it's her and her family. We get to actually see Hiromatsu's son, who we hate. I think he seems like a little bit of a loser, and he doesn't respect his wife, doesn't want her to have anything outside of the household motherly role, and their son, nothing really to take away from him. But more importantly, when Hiromatsu comes in and says that whole line where we need you for the meeting, and the son thinks it's him, but it's actually about the translator, Mariko. They go to their dinner, and I thought that this was the only time I thought Toranaga cracked a smile, and it was when Lady Kiri, that girl that was sitting at the table, was like cracking up with all the jokes. I thought that was funny because it showed you a little bit of his human side, and he was talking less like a lord and more like a person for a second.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool scene, but it's more just also putting more respect on Mariko, like she's being pulled into the inner circle.
Yes. Mariko is going to be, and I hate how I'm butchering saying Mariko like that. Like it's just so. It's
Eyes
like,
are usually like E, like Omi,
it's
Mariko,
like it's
Taiko.
like Inglorious Bastards when Brad Pitt's pretending to be Italian and he's like Gorlami. But yeah, with my damn Delco accent. But yeah, she's going to be a game changer in this show. I really like her the actress. Like I said in the first episode, the husband's going to be a problem because he's going to get jealous that she's becoming part of the inner circle. It does seem like, forgive me, I don't know how it works. I don't know if it was an arranged marriage for her, but either way, you can tell that the fact that she had to marry him or did choose to marry him, whichever one it is, but then had to basically put everything else aside and become only the wife and only, like, again, in that scene, he says, ask me or tell me why your mother's trying to do anything outside of this household, basically, and you can tell that she has so much to give and so much potential, and she's being held back by the fact that she's stuck, quote unquote, in the house. So being pulled in by Toranaga, it's going to be awesome, and it's already being shown to be awesome, and I love every scene that she's been in so far. And again, like I said, I do think that it's going to be her and JB, and the back and forth between them is going to be very, very intriguing.
So put it on the board now. I was going to ask, you think that Mariko's going to kiss JB at some point?
I wonder if it's going to be like they turn the husband into the purely like sexist, like we hate you character, where JB eventually like kills him or something because she does fall in love with JB, and I don't know if it's going to be that she gets caught or whatever it is, but I have a feeling that he's going to be a problem and he's going to have to be gone. But yeah, I do think that they're gonna
Me too.
Yeah.
Thought I was going to be the only one with that opinion, but whatever. It seems like we both kind of think it's going to go that way. Enemies to lovers kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move along because there's going to be a really good JB Mariko scene later. But I want to talk about after the dinner, we find out some things that are going to directly lead to this offshoot bucket that scene I'm going to bring up, which is the fact that Toranaga's granddaughter or grandson, I think they said daughter, his grandchild is about to be born. Like that's like
I believe it's daughter.
It's daughter, yeah, I think you're right. And also at the same time, he allowed Lady Achiba to come home to the castle because he's not hostile. Like he's not doing this for the power plays. Like he's a good dude,
right.
so like he's like, of course I'm going to do that. But why I'm queuing this up is because we have another scene where that whole conversation gets rehashed by Ishido and the other three councilmen, the ones that we've been mentioning before, right? We have Ishido, Sugiyama, Ono, and Kiyama. So this conversation's cool because it actually I like the idea that Ishido, while he's the leader, it's not just like these other three are useless because they have their own power and they're not actually always with him, and they're pulling around their Christian weight, like and trying to build things around their religion that he has to kind of navigate. So that's what this whole conversation is. Like they want John JB to be executed for being a heretic, right? And they refuse to vote on Toranaga until Ishido signs off on this.
Right. I mean, Toranaga is fully counting on the fact that they all have equal strength as regents, 5 equal regents, and it needs to be one, I guess, to him, the four others have to agree. He's counting on the fact that Ono and Ono and Kiyama are going to go against Ishido at this point and wield their power and say, no, we're not voting until we get what we want too. And that's his power play.
Yeah, I'm loving the councilmen being actual like figureheads that are going to be just like the wardens, if you want to think of it like Game of Thrones. Like these guys are so important, and the build up is there. Ono is creepy as hell.
He's creepy as hell, and I don't know what's known about leprosy back then, but obviously you can't really be touching them or near them that much. And he moves that screen to talk, and I'm like, whoa, get away from them. Don't get too close.
Yeah, he's a creep. But those guys are going to have an important part to play, and it's going to be interesting because they're always going to be on the same team. Those two, Ono and Kiyama, just because of their religion. So and that trumps everything. But anyway, we'll jump back. We'll pick up with Ishido a little bit here, but jumping back to, I guess, Osaka just in general. Like we have more Minowara lineage conversations that we kind of already spoke about, but I guess what happens is we see John JB's perspective from the makeshift little prison he was thrown into, and he sees a father in there, and we get some info dumps. That's actually where we got all the councilman information, I think, originally. Like he literally says each one's name and why they're important. We're also having public executions that are brutal as hell, just happening in the background, like every whatever they said, day or hour. And then so I guess this is just more John getting clarity about like finding out what's really going on here, like because he doesn't know much besides what Rodriguez told him, so he's really shaping his view of Japan here, and he's just getting more perspective on what's actually going on here.
This father is actually someone that he technically can trust because this father is Protestant, right?
I think so.
Yeah, he's trusting the information he's getting, and he keeps saying, I'm not here to die. It's not my time to die. I have things to do. And the father doesn't really believe him. But, yes, it was very interesting seeing all of the prisoners one by one every hour getting taken. And then when it's time for JB, the father's like, hurry up, tell me your sins. And he's like, it's not my time to die, man, even though he kind of is feeling it. He gets close. He gets freaking close. He's got that safety net. Our boy, Yabu. Yabu. He's got his back.
Yeah, man. So that's the other scene I was kind of hinting at is we see Yabu and Ishido talking. After the councilman conversation happens, this is another, if you want to call it like a scheming scene here, where you're really seeing Yabu's true colors, and I hate it because I wanted the redemption a little bit, but I just feel like it's just getting farther and farther down the road of just no return. But these two have a good relationship. They were warriors together in a war against Korea, I think is what they actually say. So they have deep ties. They trust each other. So they kind of talk openly about the whole situation in Toranaga. And Toranaga, like from their perspective, or maybe Ishido's just trying to sell this to Yabu to turn him that Toranaga's not grateful for like everything he does for him as like a clansman. Like he's not a good liege for him. So he's planting all these seeds, and I guess he's pulling at strings here to see what Yabu can really offer. And they talk about John JB and say like he's already sentenced to death. Unfortunately, I can't use him as a pawn in this game because the other councilman wouldn't let me vote on Toranaga until we decided to execute him. So that's when Yabu jumps in and says, hey, I can do this for you. And then we can skip back to that scene that you were just talking about of just him walking to his execution.
Yeah, Yabu did a big thing for Ishido there because Ishido can't risk at his position releasing JB in whichever way it needs to be, because if he gets caught, it's game over for him as a regent. The two other ones will fully go against him, and Toranaga and him aren't homies, so he will literally get pushed out, and no decisions will really be able to be made because no one will agree on anything. And for what we know right now, besides Toranaga, he does seem like the big dog. Like he seems like he takes charge, even though they all do. Like when it's time, we already talked about it. Kiyama and Ono put their foot down. But Ishido, was running the meeting that they had earlier and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Yabu did a big thing for Ishido. They are homies. That's the problem. He's not – I really do take him as schemer. He's going to be a problem for Toranaga because he's going to be Ishido's guy. And, yes, that scene where they save JB, badass. And you give them the money and they're all dying. You know that shit. Like,
Of course, yeah, you got to cover
Yeah.
your tracks. No loose
Yeah.
ends there.
no
But
witnesses.
this is actually, I like this scheming. I don't like that it's against Toranaga, but I do like that it's anti the other two Christians, councilmen, because we need some chaos on the bad side for it to really work, and it's also more believable that there would be that like vying for power even for the bad guys, like within themselves, kind of like the Forsaken and stuff, and like Wheel of Time. Like I love that stuff. So I think this is like a good conclusion that they want to keep John alive to be a bargaining piece for Ishido, like when Toranaga's like removed and stuff. So I thought that was like a great scene, and it helps explain some paths forward for some of our enemies here. But the execution scene itself, like that was brutal. It was awesome. I love how they're not shying away from blood and cutting heads off and betraying, all that good stuff that I think should just be there if you're trying to take a realistic look at the 1600s and what it would be like. So that all happens, and then that directly leads to my favorite scene of the show so far, which is when Yabu then delivers JB to Toranaga to like have this whole conversation again. And let me gush for a second, because I really thought that this was like the best scene of the show. Like I was so excited at how Toranaga was asking questions, like especially about like the map. Like when he says, okay, let me slow down because I'm getting a little too excited here.
That's all right, man. I agree.
They do call for Mariko. The heir is there. Yabu's there. It's a huge audience, right? And they're gonna fully again interrogate Toranaga, except without Father Martin there. It's gonna be Mariko who's gonna be the translator. So that's why she's there. But I love everything that happens here, because not only do we finally get some information about like JB's backstory, about he actually is saying, I don't know if it's true or not, but he's riding for the Queen of England at the time and saying like we're going to be all peaceful. So we're building out like his backstory, and then that's just, I love when he says to him like, draw me a map of the world, like what you think it looks like. That is just, it's so cool, because that's what had to happen. Like people didn't know what the world looked like. You got to compare information, and the fact that he says it's like round and like it's like a fruit, and he's drawing the two sides of the world in the sand. Like I really was just like smiling at that scene, because I thought it highlights both how knowledgeable JB is, how receptive and smart Toranaga is. All of that just like left me smiling. I was like, this is such a great scene. And then you have, on top of that, the extra layer of Mariko, who wants to have everything filtered through the idea that like the Christians are the good guys, and that's not what JB's saying. He's telling them in this scene that all of the Portuguese are claiming ownership over Japan because of this random ass treaty that they came up with 100 years ago. We've been referencing it a lot, but like that's like the basis of all this. And then, dude, I love when they say the line where Mariko's translating, and then he says what he ends up saying is that that Japan belongs to the Portuguese, and then he looks at him, he goes, did he use the word belongs? Like I thought it was so freaking good, man. I was just so happy. Like, this is so goddamn cool. But I'll shut up for a second.
No, that dude, I'm so happy that you're gushing, because I agree, man. And Shogun, whoever it is, the people that have the money know that was a big scene, because obviously the opening credits are using the sand and stuff. I don't know if you fast forward or not, but that was just so cool with him getting the stick and drawing it out. And this guy is a pilot, navigator. We already know he's competent. You trust him. He is like one of the best people in the world to tell you what the world looks like from his eyes. And having Toranaga say like, all right, we're going to talk about this more later. And he's like, whoa, real quick. Let me just finish it. And he just like starts telling, he's like, cut this in half. And then he gives the line that you said, my goodness. And then a huge part for Mariko here, because this was a defining moment for her, because she had the chance to bullshit here. When he said something against Christianity, she says to him, she looks at him and she's like, no, you're lying.
That's not true.
Tell me. Yeah. Right. She could have turned to Toranaga and been like, saying something else. Totally said anything she needed to protect Christianity. But she said, swear to your God. He swore, and she truthfully translated. That could have been, you go, that's the fork in the road for her. And she seems like a very pure character. This scene was just like defining for this show.
So that's such a powerful moment for Mariko too, because I think that's the first time we get to see her have any sort of any sort of doubt in her faith, because if the people that she just has changed her whole life to be devout to are out here like working against Japan, like her home country, and it's really just this whole ploy by the Portuguese to supplant the rulers and make them their own religion, like she's like having an identity crisis, almost like a mini one, like which is why I think the JB and Mariko thing can work really well, because it's going to be like him showing her the other perspective and her coming back away from the Portuguese, like all that. It's just compelling TV. I keep saying it. Like the word compelling keeps coming to mind, but it really is. I think it's like so well done, because we're going to see that inner strife play out, and it's going to drive a lot of her decisions, because there's going to be a moment where she's going to probably turn against her faith and go back to being anti, Catholicism. So all of that's freaking amazing. And then the last thing I want to bring up is like the end of that scene, which is them asking JB point blank, like, why are you here? And he wants to rally them to fight their mutual enemy, being the Portuguese. And that's when Toranaga says, you got to drop this. Like, you have no chance of living through this. And he goes, well, like, what if I win, or something like whatever the line is, unless I win, he says.
Unless
and
I
at
win.
that moment, it looked like Toranaga actually got respect for him, like standing his ground, having his more, like all of that. So, and that plays really well into that whole ploy of allowing him to stay in his room, and like that plays out in the rest of the episode. But I just like, because respect is so hard to get in this world, I love when you start to see it given to somebody. It's just it just makes it extra special compared to a random Western film or TV show. Sure.
Totally agree.
Okay, I think we're pretty much at the end here. That funny little bathing scene I thought was hilarious. He's like, what, you want me to bathe 2 times in a week? I'm going to get a disease. Like, that's crazy. That's mind-blowing to me. But let's just, I'll let you start with anything you want to bring up for the whole rest of the episode, which is just the 2 things are Martin trying to convince Toranaga to let the Black Ship leave. But because of that conversation, he no longer trusts the Portuguese, that they have their best interests in mind, so he shuts that down.
Right.
That's going to have some implications. And then, of course, the assassination attempt, which I think it's confirmed. The assassination attempt was by Kiyama, or Kiyama and Ono, like a combination of the two. And maybe that's a conversation, and I'm just saying confirmed when it's not. But I'm pretty sure it's the Catholics that are trying to have JB killed.
Going to what you said, I think that the Catholics sent the assassin, whether it's Kiyama and Ono or just Martin's band of priests. I don't remember who Martin's the other priest was that he was talking to in that one scene, but that guy actually seemed like he was above Martin. But either way,
I think so.
They're all Catholics, but I don't know if it would have came from, because you do have the scene where they're like, oh, they're coming for Toranaga, and he's like, it wasn't one of the regents because they were going for JB. But technically it could be, because the 2 regents are Catholic. So I don't think we know exactly, but it is the Catholics that were going after JB. I brought this up. We can
clear Ishido though, right? Yabu and Ishido are not suspects. Otherwise they would have killed him in the forest.
100%. That is not on them. And they weren't going for Toranaga. So, And I already brought this up in the first episode. I just really like the scene with JB. And are they calling her Marie or Mary instead of Mariko? At one point, Lady Marie?
Martin calls her Lady Marie. Or Maria.
Maybe I'll start doing that so I don't sound like an asshole trying to...
It's like their English. Yeah, it's just like their way of...
Maybe I'll say that instead of Mariko, since I'm such an ass, but...
I like Mariko. That's a good name.
Yeah, but I can't say it right, so... But yeah, so... JB and Lady Marie having that scene together just kind of further pushed me along the lines that they are going to have that romantic relationship, because we already alluded to this. Not only is Lady Marie having a small crisis of faith because of the whole conversation with JB and Toranaga and her translating, but there's going to be a scenario where we have Lady Marie and JB, they both respect each other. JB is Protestant and he hates Catholics, but he's going to respect and maybe love Lady Marie. And I just really like that scene, because it's funny, and we brought it up a few times, whether he's bullshitting or not because he knows he's in danger. JB, when he wants to be, is very cordial and courteous and respectful. Like, I liked that scene with Lady Marie and him for that. Like, he seemed very respectful.
Mhm.
Except for when he spoke out of turn, apparently, when he said, watch the priests and stuff.
But he took it to heart.
But even
and he's
that,
like, okay.
even that, yeah, and even that back talk though of her, that's usually what you hear someone say when they're like, maybe you're right, but back off, bro.
Yeah. Mhm. Definitely. So, I mean, I'm also gonna just give the praise to. I loved the assassination. Like, I didn't think she was gonna get that many bodies. I didn't think it was gonna be
Yeah.
blood flying on the. Like, that's just an iconic imagery in just like anime, like blood flying on the doors, like as the slices happen. Like, all of that looked great. I would say Toranaga's got some weak ass samurai in his house though. Like, Jesus,
Yeah.
man, they couldn't take this girl out. But it's gonna be like interesting because I'm sure that the opening scene, because this episode ended with Toranaga acknowledging that like who the assassination attempt was actually on, but John didn't hear any of that because it's all in Japanese. Like, they're looking
Right.
at him saying it, and like it's kind of implied. But I'm assuming there's going to be a direct conversation about what the plan going forward is between those two in the like opening episode 3.
Right. Going back to the culture stuff too, like John is just laying there in an empty room on the ground with like a blanket and a mini pillow, and he's trying to like get comfortable, and then he hears people screaming. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" But yeah, it's just wild that he's getting up here and the screaming, and people are dying, and he doesn't know one thing that's happening, even when it's figured out and the conflict is over. Like you just said, they're all speaking and explaining that they were after him, but he has no idea yet. So they will explain that. But Toranaga, again, the freaking man, setting it up. I've been waiting, to see him in action. That was a very small taste, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more. But, and like he had the one up on her. And this is another thing. Like JB saved, not necessarily saved Toranaga because he already had sliced her, but he thought he was saving Toranaga. Like he got in the way and had his own arm sliced by the dagger to save, quote unquote, Toranaga.
Yeah.
They're going to be homies. They're going to end up being homies, and I'm
them
here
working
for it.
together, that's the dream. Like, and it's going to be awesome because they're definitely going to be on the same side. And then throw Mariko in there, like that's the power team right there. So
damn right.
Dude,
don't forget our number
start,
2, man.
Don't
forget number 2, Hiramatsu.
Oh yeah, true. Of course he's riding. That's just assumed. He's the +1 to Toranaga.
Damn right.
But that's it, man, dude. That was an incredible 2 episodes. I know it was a longer podcast, but this was naturally going to happen with 2 episodes to cover, and the first one with all the heavy world building and exposition. But next one should be a little bit easier. We'll have Paul back. I'm really looking forward to watching more. Like I said, I watched these episodes twice in the first 24 hours of it dropping. Like, I could watch it again and not even be bored for a second. Like, this is a show I haven't hit this level of excitement about in a long time. And I just hope the reviews keep staying there. The chatter online keeps staying there. I don't necessarily want to say I hope for a season 2 if the writer doesn't have something in mind, because that usually doesn't work out right. But I still want them to get their praise. I want these type of stories told, and I want FX or Hulu, whoever owns this, to keep taking risks like this, because this so far is like, holy hell, like it's such a good show, and I'm excited to keep going.
Perfectly said, man. The praise has been unbelievable. Just tweets and tweets left and right from Rotten Tomatoes saying it's currently at 100 right now. I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was. And all of these publications saying this is the natural progression from Game of Thrones for prestige TV and in this type of fantasy world, or if that's how you want to say it, historical dramas. And man, I am so happy that it's getting the praise, because to be completely honest, when I saw the trailer, I don't know if I sent it to you guys or you had already seen it, but either way, when I saw it, I was like just seeing it by chance because friend of the pod, Tyler, from anyone who's listened, True Detective and Silo, he just said, yo, check this out. I didn't even think there was that great of marketing at the time when I first saw it. And then it's really just like the quality is pushing the marketing. It's the word of mouth.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it, but I do think it wasn't like bottom of the barrel marketing like some Apple TV shows are.
Definitely not. Especially as it got closer, it was definitely being talked about. But back when we saw it, like there's other shows that, in a year it's going to come out and they market it and you actually get like excited. Like I saw Shogun and I was excited because of the trailer, but not because they made me excited by marketing until it got closer, and then it started rampant, and then again, like we said, the word of mouth. So Yeah,
Yeah.
keep it coming. I can't wait. And we're going to have a blast covering this. Like Luke said, this was a longer episode, but it won't be too long for each other one. We're going to have one episode each week. We'll be getting them out as quick as possible. We're going to be on YouTube. We're going to post smaller clips just for easily digestible clips. We're going to post the whole thing. We're going to be on any of your favorite podcast apps. Guys, if you want to talk about this with us, hit us up on Discord. Hit us up on Twitter. We're everywhere. We answer everything as long as we see it. So the best place would be the Discord because we have so much fun. We are always on the Discord with everybody. Whenever someone hits us up, we talk right back. We're going to make the Shogun channel for that. And if there's anything that we missed, anything historical that we didn't understand, hit us up. Let us know. We love being corrected with that kind of stuff. We love learning. Shogun's teaching us a lot, and you guys can teach us more if you know anything about it. But if you're a fan of Bingetown TV, like I said in the intro, we are covering a lot of other shows, and we've covered a lot of other shows in the past, too. So all you have to do is check us out at BingetownTV.com or check us out at Bingetown TV on any of your favorite podcast apps. All right, Paul, sorry we couldn't finish the episode with you. We'll be back for next episode. Once again, we are Bingetown TV, and thank you so much for listening.